The Everything Sequel podcast is brought to you by 2T Fitness and the Vegas Beer Guys.
The Everything Sequel podcast contains explicit language. 'Cause we learned it from you, Dad. Michael Shantz here of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, the man who wishes to free you from carbonite, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Hello, Tom.
Aqui é, morrer, huh?
You know what's great about that?
What?
Do you know about the backstory of that?
That it's Albanian?
Oh, I think it's Nigerian.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe not Nigerian, but
It is a foreign language.
it is a foreign language, and I think it's from a country in Africa.
Okay.
And I had read that, people from that country, when they saw the movie, just went apeshit.
Yeah.
Like being able to hear their own language on screen
Even though
in 1983.
Even though Nine Numb was just repeating the same phrase again and again and again.
Yeah.
There is so much alien language dialogue in this film.
Mm-hmm.
When I came to choose a quotable, I realized I was picking between different kinds of nonsense. Because the alien language dialogue, or ALD, if you will,
Oh, very nice.
is far more interesting than the ELD in this movie. And it may be a problem that the more memorable lines are ALD rather than ELD. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, I really like it because I think one of the downsides of this film is that while Empire was world building, this is world shrinking
Mm-hmm.
on the whole. But
Yeah.
we're introduced. But the one exception to that is that we're introduced to a lot of new alien characters and species that feel like it's developing the world in a way that they did in Empire. But they don't
Yeah.
seem to do that in any other respect with this film.
Can't disagree. And yet, good film.
Very good film.
So, ladies and gentlemen,
Still for me, the second least problematic Star Wars film. Put that on your poster.
there you go. The second least problematic Star Wars film. I would love to see that on a poster.
I mean, that's looking retrospectively.
Of course.
Back from Obi-Wan to the motion picture.
Mm-hmm. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking Return of the Jedi, a 1983 film directed by Richard Marquand.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
What you got to say
You've
about
got
that?
movies like The Legacy, Eye of the Needle, Until September, Hearts of Fire. Do you know any of those movies?
No, I think his work is mainly in television.
Okay. The one movie that I definitely know is Jagged Edge.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I mean, he catches a lot of shit,
Yeah.
Richard Marquand. But I have some nice things to say about some of his direction in this movie.
I do too.
Although I do also know that George Lucas wrestled the camera away from him at a few points, so I don't really know who to credit sometimes.
Oh, wow. I'd never heard that story.
Yeah, he was totally dissatisfied with Marquand, and this is the beginning of George Lucas as a micromanager, or this is the point at which he starts to really look over the shoulders of other creatives working with him.
He didn't learn a lesson from Empire.
No, absolutely.
Leave the fucking guy alone. He'll create what's considered a middle portion of a trilogy masterpiece.
Even the special effects people, he cut.
Yeah, right.
Significant. He cut about 40 shots, I think they said, in Light and Magic that he wasn't happy with.
Right.
Obviously, he ends up doing the prequel trilogy all by himself. So I think we're starting to see, and I know he was looking over Marquand's shoulder all the time, and he just didn't like how he was doing things. He didn't like how he was. He was a stooge as well, as I understand it. George Lucas didn't want to get his hands dirty. And I think also the fact that he couldn't be director for, because of all the Directors Guild stuff. But
now, are you speaking because I know about like the credits thing.
There's that. There's the fact that, as we know, George Lucas doesn't like to go outdoors, get his hands dirty. But
Yeah, right.
I think so.
And for those listening, specifically, George Lucas didn't want any credits at the beginning of Star Wars. He got away with that because all the guilds thought that movie would make no money.
Yeah.
So when it becomes a runaway hit, they want to try to force him to put credits at the beginning of Empire, and he says, no, I don't want to do that. They fine him. And Kirshner, I believe.
Yeah.
And he paid it all himself, $250,000, and then resigned from all, Directors Guild, Writers Guild.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a
sort
scab,
of a fit
as
of
we said
rage.
in the last
Yeah.
episode, he's a big scab. But I think Richard Marquand was just a front. But as I understand it,
Like completely and totally, like in the sense of George Lucas really directed this.
No,
or...
not
Okay.
to that extent. But I know that George Lucas directed more of this than he did Empire.
Mm-hmm.
But also, this is when George Lucas starts to surround himself with yes men rather than collaborators who call him out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Marquand, I think, was picked because he was someone who could take orders. But I suppose at some point, Richard Marquand expressed some of his own creativity, and George Lucas couldn't take it. So
It's crazy.
it is crazy, yeah. It's all those analogies about Lucas turning to the dark side, and he begins as Anakin and ends up as Darth Vader. It's not hyperbole.
No, yeah, right. Well, and that's where we begin. This movie, it dips a little, 83% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
From
Very
the
fair.
high 90s of the Empire, and I think you can see that.
Yeah, it's in the 75 to 80 range, I'd say.
Yeah. A budget of $32.5 million, which I think is the most in the original trilogy. An opening weekend of $23 million. In the USA, $309.3 million, and in the world, $475.1 million. So, another smash hit.
Mm-hmm. Deservedly so.
We could not get enough. I was in the 5th grade when this movie came out. I think I've told this story before on the podcast, haven't I? When my 5th grade teacher, who I loved and adored, came in, and back then it was very unusual for a movie to come out on a Wednesday.
Yes.
Happens all the time now.
Mm-hmm.
But pretty much back then it was Star Wars sequels or Indiana Jones sequels, and that was almost it,
Wow, they really did. I mean, in so many ways, that generation just redefined film going in a way that is still with us today.
Right. It's funny.
Yeah.
And, so the one thing I remember more than anything was I wasn't going to be allowed to see it on an opening night, on a school night. I had to wait for the weekend. But I remember Mrs. Bickford coming into class on Thursday, and she had taken her son, Patty, to go see the movie. And she said, now, I don't want to ruin anything for you, but Darth Vader is Luke's father, and Leia is his sister.
Oh, my God.
And it was sort of the original spoiler for me,
This
the
woman
first
would
time.
have, in today's era of toxic fandom, that woman would have been decapitated there and then.
I know. Yeah.
Like, it would have been like Children of the Corn. You'd have all
In an
taken her out.
otherwise
You'd have all
illustrious
taken her out
career.
and burned her on a giant corn husk crucifix.
Right. Children of the Corn style. Yeah, in an otherwise illustrious career as a great educator, that was her one big mistake.
My mum did something similar with The Force Awakens.
Is that right?
Yeah. After me specifically telling her not to drop a particular spoiler about that movie, that was the first thing that came out of her mouth.
Is it Han Solo?
Yes, indeed.
Of course.
I
I remember, now, to be fair, one, it's hysterical, and two, I think the picture came out at least a month after The Force Awakens opens, but I just saw a car, and on the back was a sign that just says Han Solo dies. And that's funny.
It is, yeah. It's very funny.
But
I,
we're not talking about that movie. We're
well, there was
talking
no,
about
but there was a
this
different
movie.
edit. There was definitely. I mean, that was The Force Awakens, so my mother has no excuse. But at least in the early '80s, I don't think we had the same attitude to spoilers we have now.
Yeah, correct.
In fact, I'm pretty sure that some of the auxiliary material, merchandising around Return of the Jedi would have probably contained those spoilers as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because they just didn't track that kind of thing. They released like tie-in books and records prior to the film coming out and novelizations and that sort of thing. Just like with all the information that's in the film.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't do that anymore.
Yeah. All right. Well, where do we begin? We always begin at the beginning. I mean, let's talk this movie again, a special Academy Award just for this movie, visual effects.
Oh, could not agree more.
Yeah. But best art direction, best sound, best effects, or best effects, best sound effects.
This is some of the best sound in any film I've ever seen.
Best music.
Some of the best sound effects editing in any film I've ever seen. I'm not just talking Star Wars here. I think John Williams maybe owns Empire. Ben Burtt owns Return of the Jedi for me.
Okay.
In terms of sound.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And, I mean, should we talk right up at the front about the amount of shit this movie gets and whether or not it should get that much shit?
I think we can...
Or we kind of talk about that as we go.
About that as we go. I think that's the best way to sort of deal with it. I mean, I've already set out my stall, which is that I understand why people have problems with this movie. And
I do too.
Retrospectively, it looks like the gateway to a lot of bad tendencies in the franchise.
Of course.
Interestingly, and I'll just put this out there here, and you'll be very surprised by this, that you will not see this coming. Watching the movie this time makes me blame people like J.J. Abrams less than I did for some of the mistakes that they make going forward.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because the roots of that are definitely here in very specific ways that they pick up because, they're talentless hacks. They don't know any better. But,
Jesus Christ.
but, the bad habits they definitely picked up from this film.
Mm-hmm.
There's a
so
through line.
What are we talking? Are we talking specifically about bringing back another Death Star?
Well, I hadn't even thought about that.
Okay.
That's absolutely true. Well, and even going back to Empire, like having a different kind of stormtrooper every movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like by the time we get to Rise of Skywalker and they fly now, it's like you can't really lay that at J.J. Abrams' door. He's just doing what the franchise has always done.
Right.
So it's stuff like that, and there's a few of them. There's a few of those moments in here, and we'll talk about them as we go. Where I'll give future directors and producers from this franchise a benefit of the doubt based on the fact that they are the rot started here.
I suppose, but I'll also stick up for this original trilogy in this sense. Whenever I saw a new stormtrooper, when I see the stormtroopers on Hoth and I see the stormtroopers on Endor, for some reason those stormtroopers also seem to match the terrain that they're in.
Well, the difference is talent, right? Talent and context.
There you go.
The ability to do something well versus the inability to do something well, and the ability to make it part of a world versus someone who has no comprehension of how to do that.
All right. Shots fired, everyone.
Well, no, it's not. I was trying to unload my gun, if anything. But I seem to have loaded a bigger. I seem to have somehow loaded a bigger gun, whilst unloading this one I already had.
Yeah, right now you're layup.
I'm in a John Woo movie.
Deck.
Yeah, I'm in a John Woo movie now. Got multiple guns going at once.
There's fucking doves flying in your closet.
No, that's the last time I try to be nice to J.J. Abrams.
All right. Is
Clearly,
that what you were
clearly
doing?
I'm not. Clearly, I'm
Is
not
that-
mentally
is
capable of it.
Is that what you were doing?
Yeah, it started off that way.
I don't know.
I was trying to give the guy a break for all his horrible mistakes.
I also remember the words "talentless hack."
But that's it's better to is it I don't know, is it better to say I give him a pass because he doesn't know any better? That's what I was trying to say.
Jesus.
Well, I mean, he doesn't. What evidence is there that he knows what he's doing? Anyway, that's a discussion for another time.
Oh. Wow.
Why is that controversial? Star Wars fandom came to the same conclusion that I did. I just came to it earlier. Anyway, we're not talking about that.
I'm not.
We can't go down that
I'm not
road.
going down that road.
I've got 50
this is gonna
pages
be a
of
long
notes
enough
here.
podcast as it is.
Yes. I was trying to be nice, and I'm never going to try that again.
All right, fine. Hey, can I ask you something?
You sure can. Is it about J.J. Abrams?
No, it's about the crawl.
Yeah, I've got a lot to say about the crawl. Carry on.
Do you?
Go, but ask me the question.
Well, my question is, I had Mandela affected something
Oh, interesting.
in which I was certain that when the crawl started, I was going to see Luke Skywalker, now a Jedi Knight.
oh.
And I was watching the original version, and that wasn't there. And I thought, oh, that must have been something he changed. And then when I watched the now Lucas accepted version, it's also not there.
But it was never there. It's not even
It was
in the film.
never there. And I can't believe
the first
that
thing
I
that
got it so wrong. It's
But
just...
interestingly, yeah, I can't believe you got it that wrong, given that the first time we see Luke in this movie, he gets taken down a peg for calling himself a Jedi by
Exactly.
Jabba the Hutt, nonetheless.
Right.
Jabba is already onto his bullshit.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. The opening crawl spoke to me in a particular way. So this is the quintessential film that I think about when I think about the final part of a trilogy looping back to the original. You know, that's one of our big trilogy imbasses, right?
Yeah.
Or imbats. That's an imbat, right? That's one of our big imbats. And it's right there from the first paragraph of the opening crawl, which talks about Luke going back to his home planet
Of course. Yeah, right.
of Tatooine. Only the second time we've heard Tatooine, interestingly, in the whole trilogy. It's never referred to that in Star Wars or for the majority of Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And then each paragraph just kind of builds on that. You know, we got Death Star 2.
Yeah. Right.
But they're also simultaneously trying to up
New
the
Death
ante.
Star, who this?
Yeah, they're also trying to like up the ante at the same time, because they describe it as even more powerful.
Even more powerful.
And my favorite is in the third paragraph, where it sort of says like that if this, I'm paraphrasing here, but it says if this Death Star, not that they call it a Death Star. It's very interesting that they don't say it's a Death Star. They say it's
This new weapon or new...
it's a new weapon station or something.
Yeah.
That if it becomes functional, then the rebels are done for. Which is interesting what happens in later on in the movie when it does become functional and somehow they still have a fighting chance. At that
Sure.
point, according to this opening crawl, the movie should be over about 3/4 of the way through.
Right.
Because it does
Yes.
become functional and yet they still win.
Yeah.
So it's a very sequely piece of writing.
Yeah.
is what I'm saying.
But I guess, the thing I wonder about it, too, is it's so sequely, but is it dissatisfying?
No.
Because it never has been dissatisfying for me.
No, I've got no feelings about it. I think it works perfectly well for the movie you're about to see.
Yeah.
The only big difference I see from the previous scrolls is that we don't seem to have the same kind of ellipsis or time lapse as we had between Star Wars and Empire. It feels like we're just sort of picking up from where we left off.
I don't think we're picking up where we left off, but I think there's a shorter bit of time in the duration
But what's happened apart from constructing most of a Death Star, which
Constructing the
in
Death
the
Star
prequels takes like 20 years.
And Lando has ingratiated himself within Jabba's palace.
Interestingly, you have no problem with this, given all we've said about building enterprises in previous series. They put up a Death Star pretty fucking quickly in the time it took for the Alliance fleet to get from one side of the galaxy to the other.
I give this movie a pass, though, because they could have been building it all through Empire.
But they weren't, because no one said they were.
I don't care. I can infer,
why can't you suspend disbelief like that when it comes to
and
Star
don't
Trek
even worry about it, because my pitch is going to take care of it.
Your headcanon is discriminatory, my friend.
I'm saying in Star Trek, there's no fucking way it could have been done.
I thought about this. We don't know, and we are not talking about Star Trek on a Star Wars episode. Except to say, we don't know how much time passed between the end of the trial and when they go to space dock. Could have been a couple of years.
No, well, I think I said that on the episode,
I don't know why I said that like Shatner. Now we're talking about Star Trek.
I think I said that on the episode, though.
Okay,
that unless
fine.
that time of space is 5 years, I don't think...
I'll throw you a bone
bullshit.
and say the biggest problem here is not the amount of time that it takes to put it up in this trilogy. It's when you get to the prequels and it supposedly takes like 20 years to build a Death Star. That's where the complications come in.
Right. But also I think they serve themselves well by it not being completed too. It's not done yet.
But there's so many compared to the last couple of films, there's so many inconsistencies here because
Absolutely.
It is basically functional.
By the way, do you know why this happened? Because a complaint.
Well, a lack of originality. I don't know.
Well, there's that, but there's a complaint within that complaint is for the latest trilogy.
Yeah.
And
starts
in these movies, the original Star Wars was not supposed to have a Death Star originally, as he wrote it. It was in this movie. And then he decided to move it up to Star Wars. And he thought, well, now I removed it from Jedi. What am I going to do? They'll just build another one.
Good.
It was that and that alone.
That's from the George Lucas School of Direction. Good
exactly.
enough. Let's move on.
Right.
Of course, any other creative would sort of think, well, let's find something even better than a Death Star, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you see how that goes in the latest trilogy.
Right. Yeah, well, yeah, I use the word creative, so it's not comparable.
Yeah, you're right.
And speaking of, imbasses, as soon as the crawl's over, we get like a greatest hits package of Star Wars. Falling down in space, the Death Star, an underview of a Star Destroyer.
Yeah.
This movie is setting out its stall as every kind of sequel you could imagine.
Sure.
In a way, and that's one of the satisfying elements of it, that it's unabashed. And let's remember that they thought this was going to be the last ever Star Wars movie.
Yeah, right.
So they're doing full greatest hits. They're basically remaking the original.
But it also feels these movies are built within the serial formula. And so in that way, it feels like it fits. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think we're going forward serially in any sense. I really think we've
I
full
get
circle. This is where you get into the idea of ring theory, that George Lucas's trilogies kind of work as a better as a circle than a straight line. And again, I don't want to go back to this because it backfired so spectacularly the first time, but is the one of the biggest criticisms of The Force Awakens is that it's a beat by beat remake of Star Wars.
Star Wars, yeah.
I'd argue this film is just as much that.
Yeah, but this
It's very what we would now call fan service. Very much so.
Yeah, okay. But this also feels like it's doing that sequel thing of it's what you've seen before, but we're raising the bar. Or,
But
you know
we
what
never
I mean?
do. Not in a significant way.
Oh, I got
No, there's
not in a significant way. No, but
it's not inventive and imaginative in the way it is in Empire.
correct. So you're gonna see a cantina scene, essentially,
You're gonna see a 30-minute cantina scene, is what you're
Right.
gonna see.
and but
If you mean by upping the ante, extending the running time, I agree with you.
but what I mean, my original point was going to be, yeah, you're seeing new creatures, but they
Yeah.
don't necessarily feel better or than the original Cantina creatures.
Oh, I think significantly they do.
No, I don't mean in terms of the puppetry itself or the makeup itself. That's all better.
Well, I mean as characters as well.
Okay.
These are some of my favorite aliens coming up.
No, yeah. Absolutely, but they feel, I don't know, it felt more organic in the cantina scene to me.
Well, it's shorter.
Maybe
That
that's
helps.
why.
So, I don't want to diss this movie too much. Something that we start out with a hell of a lot of security code protocol,
Sure.
right? And as you watch it, you're going, I really hope this pays off narratively, because it's a lot of detail to go into. And this being a good movie, it does.
Yeah.
Once you get to the prequels, we'll go into this level of protocol and it will never pay off. So that's a huge difference.
Right.
Okay? That is where this is significantly superior to the kind of storytelling. I mean, it's all part of the same, I feel like the prequels are constantly setting things up that never happen.
Mm-hmm.
But this kind of setup does pay off in a big way. It's a huge story point, this security code.
Right.
And, we get a very grandiose entrance for Vader.
Yeah.
He comes out of smoke again, so that's a little bit of a callback, but because there are so many people there waiting for him, the smoke is more than he got in the last two films. It
Right.
also feels like we're upping the ante.
Well, and it's also, this movie kind of delivers, it makes a promise and then delivers on that promise in terms of the Emperor is going to show up.
I think of
And-
that as less of a promise, as more like the end of Vader
Yeah.
as we know him.
you know.
Because as soon as he says the Emperor is not as forgiving as I am, it's like, oh, you're a henchman again.
That's true.
You're what you were in Star Wars. There's a new bad guy in town.
But we spent the whole movie seeing this person in hologram form,
Yeah.
and it's sort of been this thing that's been kind of carried along for two movies
right.
of this sort of ultimate villain
You're
that
right,
we're
you're
finally going to meet.
It's
And of
not
course the
unprecedented.
actor
Yeah.
delivers on making him just delicious and fun to watch.
I would say, yeah, from that point of view, it's actually very good serial storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's been mentioned in every movie.
Yeah.
And half seen in one of the movies. I just think it's a disappointing. It very much, it just sort of cuts off Darth Vader's development as a villain at that point. He's sort of kind of irrelevant for the rest of the movie as a leader.
As a leader, he is, but he's a more interesting character.
Not for a while though. There's parts of this movie where he's just like an anxious middle manager. He's just coming in to see the Emperor. Is like just checking everything.
I told you to stay on the command ship.
Like, I know you've got this big plan and you don't have to go into detail on it, but I'm just a little bit worried because I don't quite know the details of it.
Right.
Speaking of which, we have a new British theatre actor playing an Imperial officer, Moff Jared.
Uh-huh.
And I really wish they'd have done an Admiral Piet on this guy and given him. I mean, there's a lot in that first scene
Because he's so good in that first scene.
Yeah.
And
you
then
get
we
a
just never
real
see
sense
him
of his
again.
character. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. There is a deleted scene which kind of follows up on.
Oh, really?
Because they set up a sort of triangular hierarchy between him, Vader, and the Emperor.
Gotcha.
And that does develop in this deleted scene because it's just before Vader, that scene I just talked about, where Vader goes in to see the Emperor, say, just checking in, just seeing how things are going. I haven't heard anything for a while. And it's even more like that outside because Moff Jared is like, he says something like, we don't need you. You're not required here. So, like, Moff Jared gets in between him and the Empire, which is a really interesting development of that relationship. I kind of get why they cut it out, but I mean, that scene already has that dimension without the prelude.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can see all that when he talks to the Empire, that their hierarchy has changed, their power has shifted.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the idea of this guy, getting in the middle of it. And we have a fleshed out Imperial officer like Admiral Piet, who is also in this movie, but is really just there ornamentally.
Right.
See, I mean, again, another classic example of looping back to the original film.
Oh yeah.
C3PO and R2D2
walking
in the desert on
the
Tatooine.
valley of a desert.
Yeah, giving us exposition and recapping what happened at the end of the last film. So not only are they where they were at the beginning of Star Wars,
right.
they also have the same function as storytellers and audience surrogates.
Right.
And there's another deleted scene right before this, which shows Luke creating his lightsaber in a cave with R2D2 and C3PO and sort of sending them off. So the scene was supposed to begin with them coming out of a cave in which Luke was there and he just
present.
made I definitely prefer this opening to the scene. And they're talking about Jabba the Hutt, who's another great. It's like the Emperor. We've heard about Jabba, in
right?
each
Yeah,
movie,
exactly.
and
they deliver on that promise. That puppet's amazing.
We're like with the Emperor, we're finally seeing characters we've heard about but only glimpsed.
Yeah.
And as they're kind of entering the palace, I think the pace and the style in which we're doing this tells us this is going to be slow going, and also full of weird aliens and robots.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, once again, like the beginning of Star Wars, they're droids on an errand with a hidden agenda. And
very much a callback.
Very much a callback. He's even got R2D2 even has a hologram message inside him.
Right. Yeah.
Now
they know how to use it.
But it's up. But we're up in the ante because it's a better hologram.
There you go.
Thanks to Industrial Light and Magic.
Love it.
Something.
Yeah, we get the front door. We get a little droid torture.
Something I really appreciate about Jabba's palace, which, is an interesting way to start the movie. At the length it is. Like, we understand...
Is that whole thing? I mean, is the whole Jabba's palace... Because, I mean, we're clearly... The first act is Jabba.
Yeah, it's 30 minutes of the movie.
And that's it, yeah.
Exactly 30 minutes of the movie. Without any cross-cutting, which I don't think we've done before. Like, I don't think we've had such a self-contained sequence.
We start cross-cutting later, and I think I mentioned that in our ranking episode, where that doesn't really happen in earnest until Act 3 of this movie.
Even in Star Wars, even on Tatooine in Star Wars, I think we cut away to what's going on in space sooner than we do here.
Mm-hmm.
This is like... I mean, you could literally cut out this sequence as it is and have it as a teaser episode for the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? You're like,
yeah.
It feels like an episode of a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
In length, style. It works. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end of its own.
Well, and so is that one of the things that makes the movie weak for you?
I think it's pros and cons.
Yeah.
I have a lot of good things to say about this. The first one is
Because
that
the sequence itself,
Yeah.
there's so much in it to enjoy.
It feels it's.
But it makes the movie a little bit clunky on the whole, I think.
I
And,
agree.
like-
I would agree with that. But I have a lot of good things to say about it. And the first one is that when we get into the palace, and this is just good storytelling, I think we understand the hierarchies immediately.
Oh, yeah.
We know that there's the
Big
pig
Fortuna, we got...
the pigmen.
Yeah,
Big
right.
Fortuna as the major domo, and Jabba as the king of the king of them all.
You kind of have the court jester.
Yeah. Salacious Crumb is the court jester. You got the
Yeah.
slave girl. I think the atmospherically it's really good. I like that it's dimly lit and there's a lot of smoke. I do wonder how much of that is to hide inferior puppetry, but definitely it works both ways. And this is a callback to the original because the original movie took its time to start. By this time in Empire, we already had a monster attacking Luke.
Mm-hmm.
So that you can compare and contrast.
Right.
And we find Han Solo where we left him, frozen in carbonite. We're very much picking up the characters in the same predicament we left them in. There's not much sense that anything other than intricate planning, the details of which I'm still a little blurry about, has taken place since we last saw our heroes. So it's almost like time has frozen, right?
Yeah.
It's just like we've all been in the carbonite with Han Solo,
right?
since the end of Empire. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned droid torture. That's kind of my next note. Torturing the Gonk droid, and these are all legacy droids as well. These are all droids we've seen, I think, certainly in Star Wars.
Yeah.
But I think we've seen them. I think we see them at the beginning of Empire as well. And it's kind of increasingly sinister how we're depicting the treatment of droids, but it also seems far more cartoonish. Like it's a really weird.
It's a weird mix.
It's a weird mix, like because
my note is
it's torture as comedy.
Yeah, I put robot masochist as comedy.
Yeah, exactly. And once again, we're calling back to the droid salvage from with the Jawas in the original movie, but here done as torture porn, which is like I put here that this is I don't know, is it possible that this is a too inventive twist on the formula? Like maybe is this going too far or not going far enough? I don't quite know.
Yeah.
It's a very memorable scene. I'm
Can't
never
deny that.
gonna forget it. Also, Richard Marquand is the voice of the snippy droid.
Yeah.
You're a feisty little one, but you'll soon learn some respect.
It also always kind of bothered me during the torture that, except for the extreme close-up, you can see the machinations of the effect. Because the hot iron is not really touching the feet, but you can see the steam shooting out of the feet. It takes me out of it for a moment.
Okay.
I get,
Well,
I understand how they did it. You know what I mean?
Well, thanks for the segue.
Okay.
Because speaking of taking you out of it, this is where the special edition comes in hot.
Well, okay, you know what? Let's take a break. Because we got too much to talk about in the differences. The beginning of this movie and the ending of this movie are so vastly different when you talk about original to special editions. So why don't we take a break and then we'll come back and talk about it in earnest because it's too big a conversation. Does the coronavirus have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2AT Fitness was started by Tina Bernard. She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2AT Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing Return of the Jedi, a 1983 film, I guess mostly directed by Richard Marquand.
Yeah, mostly. If it's a bit like, Yes I Can, if Frank Sinatra says it's okay.
Yeah.
I think it's directed by Richard Marquand if George Lucas says it's okay.
Can Richard come out and play? When last we left, we were getting to this Jabba's palace scene and kind of talking about the difference between the original and the special edition. And so we know, of course, you said smoke 'em if you got 'em when we started this whole series, and I watched the originals, and then going back and watching the special edition, it's jarring.
Well, I don't know what happened on your copy of when you watched the special edition, but something happened where it got mixed up with the deleted scene from Monsters, Inc. I don't know if you had the same thing.
Yes, it's very much like that.
But
it's what's amazing to me is that
you have drawn over my film, sir.
Yeah. What's amazing is that
get your marker pen off my film, George.
I mean, that's how it comes across. When it comes across as egregious.
It's very
in the sense of, I don't know how George Lucas saw this final cut kind of put together and said, "We're done. Send it."
It's egregious and gratuitous because there's extra Boba Fett. Boba Fett for no narrative reason that I can think.
And I kept wondering, was that originally shot or did they go back?
No, they went back.
That's terrible.
And they went back to the slave lady as well. Like all the close-up footage of her is from the late 90s. It's the same woman, I believe, as was in Jedi, and I guess she'd aged well enough to kind of look it pretty much the same. And that's not the problem. I'm all for that. You want to, if she looks like the same person, you want to go and reshoot a few things. That I don't have a problem with that. That's not what's jarring to me. Again, as with Empire, the rare moments that George Lucas added something to Empire.
There's new band.
Oh well, that's a monstrosity.
Members.
The Chicago Blues Bar, Monsters Inc. thing, but the shots that they add of the slave girl going down into the Rancor pit and seeing her down there, it really interferes with the building of tension and atmosphere. We're not supposed to see what's down there because that spoils the reveal of the Rancor later on in the film. And also, like if you are not that you should, if you are going back to do a special edition, how about you fix that cut that makes it look like that girl shrinks and then Jabba eats her? That cut's still in there. You know what I'm talking about, right? Just the nature of the cut, like it's like what do you call it? Like Russian, like Russian montage cinema. You can make anything happen if you do the right cut. And accidentally, they put two shots together that make it look like the girl goes down in the pit, she somehow shrinks, comes back up into Jabba's cup, and he eats her. Fix that. Put something in between that breaks up that weird cinematic illusion.
That's fantastic.
But even the special edition can't take away from how incredible a piece of puppetry Jabba is.
Yeah.
I mean, you can look behind the scenes as like 20 odd people operating
Right.
Jabba. But
But it reminds me
just
of
that-
our talk of Yoda in the last episode.
Yeah,
it's
it's
the
exactly the
same
same.
level of amazing work.
decades later, the verisimilitude of the creature has not dated.
Right.
He
Exactly.
is so painstakingly created that they've never been able to reproduce this in
I was
any
just
other
gonna say, you
medium.
know what looks completely dated every time you see it? When you see Jabba in Star Wars.
Yeah, and they've tried. I mean, like, even they know that they can't reproduce it because every time you get a new special edition, there's a new Jabba, and it looks as bad as the last one, just in a different way.
Yeah, exactly.
And then in Book of Boba Fett, it's not Jabba, but they have some.
They
other
have some huts, but they
don't look good.
don't look good. The only
And if they don't look good now, they're never
Yeah.
going to look good, right? I mean, it's sort of like we're at a pretty good stage of CGI practical melding. And I think we just have to accept that, that this puppet is the only way to do Jabba. Also, and again, and this is not to do with puppetry, we're doing a lot to build the character of Jabba.
Yeah.
And even the first time I saw this, I was pretty sure he's not going to survive another half hour of this film. We're doing a lot of character work on this guy. I mean, it's great for these scenes, but again, it comes with that sort of bitter aftertaste of,
Right.
is it worth spending all the time when we know he's going to get his comeuppance pretty soon?
I still like it though.
Oh, I think honestly, it is one of the most incredible achievements.
I agree.
In puppetry,
And actually, I think
in creature design,
I think because
in execution,
because Jabba is so good, this whole front scene works better than it should.
it's definitely more compelling. Oh, also, this is an overall note for me for this entire film.
Mm-hmm.
This entire film could have become very generic if they didn't stop to add in a few character moments and beats that just really elevate it. And it starts with Jabba and it goes through to Admiral Akbar, Nien Nunb, even some of the Ewoks.
Yeah.
Like, without that, it would feel like any other space opera.
Yeah, I agree.
But they're still at the point where they can add in those beats. And of course, Phantom Menace doesn't have any of those beats.
Of course not.
Interestingly, though, the burping frog is one of the moments in the film you'd think was from the special edition, but it's just from the original.
It's from the
movie,
original,
so
yeah.
It's just, sometimes it's a matter of degree, not kind, right? What do you think about first of all, I'm really glad that in all this, this special edition nonsense, that they still kept the Max Rebo's playoff music for Chewbacca. So, like, when he's taken away, Max Rebo does da 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 da. It's like live from the Apollo.
Absolutely.
As former guest of the show.
Well,
Peter
and
Retail once
we might have
observed.
talked about this before, but the changing of the music at the beginning of this movie and the end of the movie, also reprehensible. I don't, objectively worse music in both parts of the movie.
A music that doesn't quite, like, you listen to Lapti Nek, which is the original song that plays in Jabba's palace, and again you think like late 70s, early 80s, when you hear this sort of weird Chicago blues throwback. Is it called Jedi Rocks or something like that?
I don't remember.
That they replace it with. It's like, well, yeah, that sounds like one of those late 90s blues revivals. So
Yeah.
it just sounds like the period in which you make the movie.
Yeah.
It remains as dated.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just dated at a different time period. So why bother?
Yeah, exactly.
I'd rather this feel like it all came from the same time period than it feel like
something
it
that
came from different parts of history.
Yeah, almost the turn of the century.
Exactly.
Fuck.
What do you think about Leia as a bounty hunter?
I loved that. Like when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I always
mean,
thought it was weird, though, that this creature was speaking and repeating the same phrase over and over again, but it means different things.
Yeah.
That's not so
this
good.
is like what I think this is where the child brain and the adult brain start to kind of separate, because like I to me this I never questioned this plan when I was younger.
Yeah, exactly.
And now it looks like a David Mamet level of subterfuge has gone into essentially going into a room and stealing a 3D painting.
Right.
That is all they're doing.
But also,
And yet they've had months to plan this elaborate scenario. Like Kronstein in From Russia with Love. It's like, how many variables can there be? You go in there, you get him out, you fight off whoever tries to stop you. It's that simple.
Yeah, but to me, I always remember thinking, it seemed like there was, even back at the end of Empire, I'll meet you on Tatooine. We're gonna, we're really gonna plan this to the T. It's gonna be the score of scores so that we can get Han Solo out. And then the second she even puts down the carbonite and it makes a bunch of noise and she looks around, I remember always thinking, this is a terrible plan. Like, this is not a good plan.
Yeah, that's the other factor, is like, this is the best you came up with. You've had conservatively 2 months, generously 2 years,
right,
to come up with this plan.
I realize it's midnight.
However long it takes to build a Death Star.
I realize it's midnight, but you might want to check behind the curtain, just see if anybody's awake. How about a sleeping agent? Does that mask keep you, like a little smoke bomb that puts everyone to sleep? Then get Han.
Yeah.
But also, the thing that's strange is Luke arrives, and was all of this part of his plan?
It makes no sense. It's like,
because he had planned for R2-D2 clearly to be on the barge with his lightsaber.
It makes no sense. It makes no sense. It's better not to think about it. It's a little bit like a sitcom where everyone just keeps coming to the door in stages. It's like the Dick Van Dyke Show a little bit. This is what I mean. It feels like an episode of a TV show. Like a sitcom called Jabba's Palace.
Luke's a Jedi now, but he can't see that he's standing on a trap door.
Yeah. The return of Han Solo. Yeah. It's the moment of the movie we know Harrison Ford's coming back, and he didn't just license the sculpture of his face.
Starring Crispin Glover as Han Solo.
Exactly. And I noted here that, for all the kind of feisty banter we had in the last film, it's a little disappointing that we go straight into the sap. Like, the first thing she says is, someone who loves you. I'm like, It's like, I know Lee Brackett and Lawrence Kasdan aren't around anymore, but could we not have just a little bit of a nod to that? Because it's just like romantic melodrama from the get-go.
Yeah, and it never stops.
I just want a little bit of... And it never stops. Although, this is like a lot is, in fandom, a lot is talked about how underdeveloped Han Solo is in this movie, and how when he comes out of the carbonite, he doesn't seem like the same Han Solo previously. But this is where he kind of consolidates his catchphrase of, it's not my fault.
Yeah.
This is when it sort of becomes like a real catchphrase for him. And also, and again, giving J.J. Abrams the benefit of the doubt, I always thought he retconned the idea. No, I always thought he retconned the idea that when in Force Awakens, when Han Solo says, this is what I do, I taught my way out of trouble. I was like, I don't remember that ever happening. This is it. This is what he's thinking about.
Yeah, right. So
there's at least one precedent for that, as opposed to 0, which is what I used to think. Now, I'm gonna say, I want to just put this out there, okay? I am the world's biggest Harrison Ford fan. You said that Star Wars is the reason you love movies. Han Solo is the reason I love acting.
Yeah. Okay.
I once, when I was a kid, I once won a prize for poetry, and they interviewed me in the local paper, and it's right there in print. I said, I want to be an actor like Harrison Ford.
Oh, that's great.
So I say this with all bias and admiration. I think his performance in this movie is fine. It's a bit broad.
No, but I also, I guess the thing I wonder
His
about
blind acting is not good.
is what?
His blind acting is not good.
I'll agree with that.
He's crossing his eyes at one point to show he's blind.
But for me, what I was going to say was his big complaint was always how thinly Han was drawn
Right.
in the scripts. I think this might be his thinnest, as
Sure,
written.
but he's not meeting them. But he's not meeting them halfway.
Yeah, you're right.
Because it was so. He's talked in interviews about how he always played Han Solo with an edge of Hope and Crosby, like it was a road movie in space.
Yeah.
But in this movie, I think less about Hope and Crosby and more about Mr. Magoo and Norman Fell. It's a very fine balance, right?
Oh my goodness gracious!
And I say that as his, he's one of the greats.
He is. And there are.
This is not his finest moment. However,
No.
it's a fine moment.
Sure. But it's funny you say that because when I think of the moments where I love Han Solo in this movie, it's the most benign shit. It's don't get too close, Chewie. I don't know, fly casual.
People really dislike those scenes. I've never understood it. People really hate that stuff.
I don't know why.
I don't understand why either. I tell
But
you
I
something.
also, the other line that comes to mind is, well, why don't you use your divine influence and get us out of this?
Yeah.
But these are, those when those are the signature moments for a character in a movie, you're standing on thin ice, I think. And there's just not enough there for him.
True.
I think you're right that he's not meeting what is there halfway, but there's not enough there for him that there was certainly in Empire and
not even in
Star Wars either.
I think something is worth the price of admission alone is his reaction to seeing the Ewoks for the first time.
Yes.
I mean, maybe he's not meeting the material, but he's meeting the audience halfway.
Oh yeah.
With the way he reacts, he's like, "Okay, so this is the rest of the movie, huh?" That's what he's saying in that kind of half laugh that he does when he sees an army of teddy bears with spears for the first time. Now he has also, speaking of other of other comedians, there's a Bob Newhart style conversation with Chewbacca.
Yes.
Which is like this kind of in-world catch-up for Han.
What?
Stuff we already know. Oh, crucially, we don't have them on screen saying, "Oh, by the way, you know how when you went into Carbonite you hated Lando Calrissian? Well, he's the guy who's going to get us out of trouble." But he obviously does say that to him because by the time he's sees
saving Lando.
He's over
even
it.
saying, "Where's Lando?" I thought, why do you care?
I love the fact that Luke Skywalker, who is the next special guest to walk through the doors of Jabba's palace, he's the titular Jedi who is not a Jedi.
Right.
It's all fucking smoke and mirrors. It's like one continuity we have from Empire is that the film is trying to take Luke down a peg. The series never fully invests in Luke Skywalker. Right through to The Last Jedi, for that matter. And here we have a big callback to the Jedi mind trick.
Yeah.
That he tries to pull. He pulls it successfully on Bib Fortuna,
but not on Jabba.
So it's also an inversion, which is very, very amusing. So amusing, in fact, they try to do the joke again in Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
Except longer and without humor. I love the fact that even Leia is looking at Luke like he dropped the ball on this one.
Yeah.
It's like there's nothing like a withering look from Carrie Fisher
in an iron bikini.
You done fucked up. Yeah, what do you think about that? This has always been a big.
This has
point of
always been a big
controversy.
thing. I, you know, when I was a kid, I thought she was so beautiful,
She
and she
She
was,
is.
you know,
She was, and she
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
and
Is it appropriate?
like to the story they're in.
I'm with you.
know,
Go for it. Don't hold back on my account.
So
I'm
the thing
with you.
for me is, people make that argument about Carrie Fisher, but not the woman that with the long, whatever it is, not horns, but to the one that was
Buns.
yeah,
Horn. They are more like, in your defense, they are more like
Soft
horns than
horns.
buns, but they're usually referred to as buns.
soft
Yeah.
horns.
Soft horn. Opening for the Lemonheads. Soft horns.
But nobody's making that argument for that actor. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
in world, I think it makes fine sense, and it's an obvious.
I think you're dead right.
Yeah,
I think you're dead on. The fact that it is, I mean, there is there's an element of exploitation and
Of course.
titillation that you can't deny.
and
but
that's
she is the replacement slave.
yeah,
girl.
right. She's the replacement slave
So
girl.
we've already seen, and
And the
this is what I mean
exploitation
about,
part, I think that's
Yeah.
off screen
and on screen.
and on screen, but because
That's what Jabba's doing
because
to
the
her.
on screen part makes sense, I can't
yeah,
get
agree.
mad on behalf of what they were also trying to do off screen.
But this is what I mean about the character work they're doing with Jabba, which is kind of all for naught because he dies in about 10 minutes. But they go to the extent of showing you, and again, this is just good storytelling, like with regards to power. He wields power through sex.
Yeah.
We saw that with the girl. Like, basically, it's implied that he says, all right, now I'm going to have sex with you. And she's like, I'd rather be eaten by a dinosaur. So the fact that that's set up that way, she's the replacement slave girl. It feels organic in a way that that even though it's just trying to titillate the
Right.
viewer, and of course the way it ends up with her taking a revenge
Yeah,
on
exactly.
her predator. But I'm not going to give it a pass. But it's more complicated than it might look when you just see her in
Absolutely.
basically
When
naked.
you see a still photo
Yeah,
with the words of what the fuck,
yeah.
I think there's a longer conversation to be had than that.
I agree, and it's not one that isn't without back and forth.
Right.
But there's more to it than you might think. Oh no, the Rancor.
Yeah.
Here I'm just gonna say it: biggest, best monster yet.
Yeah.
Love it. Pure schlock,
Pure
Greek
schlock,
mythology.
but you also, I love after Luke kills the Rancor monster, you get that.
Moment of pathos.
It's great. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, my note here is that
Even
the Rancor
monsters
keeper-
have one person that love them.
But that's what elevates it. Is like the Rancor keeper crying at the death of the Rancor.
great.
Which, by the way, I think monsters are always better when they're a little bit cute. And the Rancor has a baby face that is like no other.
It looks like a pug dog.
It
Yeah.
does. It does. But that's what elevates it, because that moment of pathos and mourning for the monster recalls to me the best monster movies.
Right.
It's like the end of King
Right,
Kong.
right.
You know, where you're like, it's like, yeah, we kind of needed to deal, because you can't have him running around New York like that. But it's sad we had to kill him.
Exactly.
And that's what it feels like here. And, many people have said that this is the most emotionally affecting
In the
moment in
whole
the movie,
movie.
which perhaps doesn't speak well for the movie.
I
but
disagree with that, by the way, but
I disagree with that too. But, again, it's one of those character beats and moments that stops this from being pure serial.
But it's funny because
nondescript
you're
storytelling.
hitting on, because my exact note was the Rancor monster. Let's talk about effects, and all of it is done so well.
I mean, if you want to up the ante on the Wampa,
Yeah, right.
you've
done
done
it.
it. You've succeeded. And what's interesting about it as a set piece for me is that, you know, if you look at the whole trilogy, it's a pretty incidental conflict.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's you know, it's not like Luke has been pursued by the Rancor for the last two movies, right? This is
and
just
it actually
happened.
undermines things in the movie, like Luke being a Jedi Knight and being able to, you know, supposed to be able to see things in the future and predict things. And
that's purposeful, I think. This is, again, that's like the movie doesn't want Luke to have it easy,
right?
And this is his hero testing moment. You know, this feels like a scene straight out of Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. You know, it feels like they've worked from that template, and so it feels bigger in the storytelling than it is when you break it down and think, you know, he fell into a pit. He doesn't know this monster. There's probably 1,000 ways you can beat it. But you know, this is it. This is his kind of hero trial.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's what it feels like. So I think it's excellent. I love that sequence, and you're absolutely right. The button with the Rancor Keeper, who's also in For Your Eyes Only, is magnificent. Absolutely, and is, you know, again, one of those actors that you will find in any 70s or 80s Doctor Who.
There you have it. An hour and 4 minutes in, minus commercials, everyone.
I find it kind of ironic that C-3PO only does what he's programmed to do when he's being held captive or threatened. Because he's basically doing his job for Jabba, but under duress. I love the fact that Han's sassy patter is still there, but no one else is joining in.
Yeah, right.
He's almost like, hey, remember in the last film when we were all like back and forth, and everyone's just like, no, we're over that. Stop trying to make sassy banter happen.
Exactly.
You know, it's that kind of feeling.
Well, it's because, you know, because Han is sitting there saying things like, "You're gonna die here," you know, but Luke's too busy being a thoughtful Jedi to.
I really like that exchange. I think that's a really good. It negotiates Luke's character growth with the history that the two of them have had in the series.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
It's really nicely done. I like the fact again that, like, you know, the scene completely undermines Luke's point of view, because he's like, you know, it's all taken care of, and Han's like, oh great,
right.
This was another special edition piece of chicanery. Extra banthas.
Yeah, okay.
Doesn't add anything.
No, of course not.
The shot was never designed to show us the wildlife of Tatooine. We were just supposed to go straight to the barge.
We're just seeing the fucking barges on the sand. That's all we need.
Yeah. I love the fact that, as in the original Star Wars...
Although, interestingly, sorry to interrupt, but the barges on the sand, they're worse effects than even, you know, Luke's speeder in the original Star Wars. It doesn't look as good.
It's, yeah, okay.
But, I mean, it's a minor quibble, but...
it's, I don't know. This sequence is kind of schlocky enough that it kind of gets away with it. I think.
You're probably right about that.
As in Star Wars, the bands that play in the Tatooine gin joints only have one song that they repeat ad nauseam.
Yes, right.
Max Rebo's still doing
their
da 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 da. You know, his like opening bars of "Too Hot to Handle," which is all apparently he knows. And they get a reunion of the droids.
Yeah,
they've been apart for 10 minutes. It's like the whole of Empire
of
done
all
in
the
microcosm.
gin joints in all the world.
Yeah. Yeah. My Sarlacc pit was also drawn over.
Why would anybody take the great work that's done in the original movie and then add Audrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors to it and think this is a good idea?
Am I wrong in thinking that the threat of the Sarlacc pit was always that we didn't see the Sarlacc?
Yeah, right.
We just saw the vagina,
the thorned vagina of it.
The thorn, the vagina dentata, and we didn't know what's inside.
Yeah.
Of course, this is not a lesson that we've learned. Like, the Book of Boba Fett begins inside the fucking Sarlacc pit. which ironically is the best moment of that entire series.
Yeah.
You know, that doesn't say much for the series. It's really interesting to me, the build up to the I don't know what you call it, the onslaught.
Yeah.
The nodding and the music and the reaction shots has been parodied both by Family Guy and also Lego Star Wars. Sure. But it still, to me, reads as cool in a 10-year-old kid way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, it's ridiculous. There is way too much nodding. The fact that every time anyone nods, it goes, done.
Yep.
Done. Like, I get it. I get why you would parody it, but I can still tap into that kid brain.
Oh, absolutely.
Where I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah. Little salute from Luke.
Yeah.
You're you know, it really latches on to the 10-year-old brain.
Yeah.
In the sense of, I mean, he's going to, I mean, we probably tried this in swimming pools, you know, like where you turn around and grab the diving board and see how far back up you could get or something.
We got the local fat kids to stand at the side of the pool.
Throw us something that we can grab like it's a lightsaber and do a flip. And, you know, I mean, just all of that shit is so, you know, you would build the world as a kid, in your own mind of playing that out. Ugh.
Definitely. That's how. Yeah, and it still feels that way, despite the Mr. Magoo slapstick and the needless waiting around.
Yeah, right.
Like, it feels like they could have pulled this punch at any time. But it's fantastically shot and edited, and this, you know, that's where, you know, I want to give credit to Marquand / Lucas where I can. Mm-hmm. And this is a great example of that. Like, you know, some of the content is a little bit hokey.
Sure.
But the way it's shot and edited is really slick.
I think so too.
And then, overall, it feels like a good sequence.
I feel like the other thing we should talk about within this sequence is, of course, Boba Fett's death.
Yeah, I mean, it undermines everything that's good about that character.
Yeah.
For the sake of a not very funny joke.
Do you remember thinking that when you first saw it too?
And not for the last time in this franchise. Right. Carry on, sorry.
I was going to ask though, did you feel like that when you saw it as a kid?
No.
Okay, me neither.
No, it all kind of. Yeah, I think again, it's like it's hard to separate. If this was a one-time deal, you could just go, all right, sure.
Mm-hmm.
But you know that Lucas thinks this is the funniest thing he's ever seen,
right?
And then probably like watches that in the editing room and goes off and draws Jar Jar. Right? I mean, that's how it feels to me. That's how I feel the timeline goes. You know what I mean? It's that's the problem.
Right.
It's like and this is the thing I keep saying. Probably this is the headline for both of these films. Is if all of it was a one-time deal, it would all work perfectly.
Sure.
But it never is.
Right.
It's a 20-30 time deal, and that's the problem. Leia takes on Jabba, apologizing for exploiting her sexually by having a killer predator.
Yes.
Like it. Lando, I'll tell you something that I'll never unhear. Lando's scream. It's him and James Brown out on their own limb, as far as I'm concerned. It's like it's like, I don't know how many octaves it is, but it goes, yow! It goes up and down. It's incredible. And you know what? And then, you know, and he has a great line. It's like, wait, I thought you were blind. Yeah.
Just a little higher.
It's these little stupid character moments that prevent it just from becoming one note, I think.
No, yeah, I agree.
I mean, it's not the needless slapstick might be tied up with this, but actually their impulse is right to add in a little moment between characters here. It just doesn't have to end with a slapstick accident. Leia and Luke
big
swinging
laughs
on a rope.
though, like when we first saw it.
Yeah. Leia and Luke swinging on the rope. I mean,
Yeah, where'd that thing come from?
fan service. I mean, that's pure fan service, isn't it? To Star Wars.
Yeah, of course.
My note here is that because they think this is the last film, they have the license to do that. Like it makes. This is the last chance to.
Well,
make
like
that
you
callback.
said, it's George Lucas circular storytelling.
But very on the nose. Like there is.
Yeah.
You know, we so much of modern franchise media is drowning in fan service, and you can't say that this is not that.
Mm-hmm.
It might not bother us as much, but it's the same thing.
Did you also always have a sense of, the barge is going to explode, and they need to get away quick? Did you ever have a sense that they were going to get away quick, and then somebody in the room said, "What about the droids?" And so they had to add, "And don't forget the droids."
Yeah, well, this is another. This is another. I think it's like, and I guess the Ewoks is like the pinnacle of this. We're trying to be more family friendly, but weirdly, we're also getting bloodier. It's a really weird mix.
Yeah,
I suppose it's no accident that next year you get Temple of Doom, because that has the same sort of like.
Yeah, absolutely.
More family friendly, also gorier.
It's going to involve a child now,
disturbing.
but we're gonna torture a child, but we'll have
like
monkey
people
brains and hearts torn out of chests, and yeah.
It's interesting because what has become internet fan theories about Star Wars started out, and I'm sure you know this, as school playground conversations about the films.
Sure.
When you didn't have them to go back to and refer to, so anything that anyone said about them, you'd buy.
Right.
Because it's your word against theirs. And for me, when the barge explodes, I do remember someone in the school playground saying, you can see bits of Jabba as the barge explodes there.
That's amazing.
And that stays with me to this day. I'm still looking for bits of Jabba when that barge explodes.
Like
it's
in
really
Jaws
interesting,
3D.
It's really interesting to me that we have the same conversations about properties like Star Wars in exactly the same way, and yet we have a medium that could immediately prove or disprove any of this. We can watch the films whenever we want, and yet people still say ridiculous shit about them that is clearly not on screen. It's fantastic. I just think it's like we've gone nowhere as a fandom. And we have every reason to develop and change our bad habits.
I love it.
Well, so we're 35 minutes in the film.
I was gonna say 37 minutes in,
and we've had one set piece.
Right.
So this film is really pinning its success to bigger and fewer sequences.
Correct.
And luckily, they're very good sequences.
Yeah. Right.
I think that's the only only reason this film succeeds, is that it takes its shot when it needs to.
Yeah, it's such an interesting bird, this movie, in that way.
Yeah,
because
you've got to get those sequences right, or this movie crumbles.
Right.
I really like the line, "The Alliance should be assembled by now," because what that line's telling me is that what we've just seen is all just killing time.
Yes.
It's like the stand-up comedian who, like when someone comes in late, it's like, I was just killing time until you got here.
Yeah.
That's what the Jabba's Palace sequence feels like.
The Alliance wasn't waiting for you to go save Han.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then, we have I Owe You One, calling back to lines from the first and the second part, bringing
movie,
the trilogy together. Nice serial stuff. Luke's mechanical hand is wounded. Which tells us that
again we'll call back to that later.
It's thematic and symbolic for the rest of the movie, but it's also a recap of the last film, and just answers a logistical question of because we see him get shot.
Yes,
on the barge. We see his hand get shot on the barge,
but apparently it didn't short circuit the hand.
No,
it just melted the skin, the fake skin.
The fake skin, yeah. And then we get our first wipe to the Empire
Yeah, I mean,
after the well, not a cold open, but it feels like a cold open of Vader going to the Death Star.
right.
And we have, exactly the same shot for the Emperor's arrival.
Yeah,
it seems to
exactly.
be. I mean, this is one of the moments where you could accuse this film of a lack of imagination and variation, even within the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And the first physical appearance of the Emperor.
Yeah.
He arrives literally shrouded in mystery. Face
Yes.
is shot in fragments.
Yeah.
I really love
But I like that.
I really love the way Mark Kwan / Lucas shoots the Emperor in this film.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think he finds all the right angles, the right distance of the camera to his face at the right time. But yeah, he's introduced as an enigma. And yet with his kind of laugh and his walking stick, much more of a kind of space opera serial villain
Absolutely.
than we've perhaps been used to.
Sure.
He's, Ming the Merciless.
yeah.
With a little bit of Victorian
There
melodrama
you go.
thrown in.
Well, I tell you what, let's take another break. Because
Sure.
we've finished the first act of this movie and we're about to press forward, so
Damn it.
we'll take a break, everyone, and then we'll come back. Sound good?